I'm going to welcome everyone. I am Terry Boyer. I direct the Ann Welsh McNulty Institute for Women's Leadership at Villanova University. And I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the second in our series on women's leadership development. Today's panel will focus on something that I'm sure everyone here is addressing at the moment, and that's navigating work and life at times of crisis. And I will, in a moment, turn it over to our moderator who will do introductions, etc. But I wanted to go over a couple of logistical issues with everyone. There is a Q&A that is at the bottom of your screens. We are asking participants that if you have questions that come up during the panel session, that you post them in the Q&A section, and our moderators and tech support will be looking through those questions to help us when we get to the end of the panel session to feed those questions to us so that our panelists are able to ask them. The chat is not open for the rest of the group during the first part of the panel session. So again, welcome everyone. This time of crisis that we're facing right now with regards to COVID, the social unrest, etc., that is facing our country and the world at the moment has definitely disproportionately affected women. And as a result, we are working on creating this panel session that highlights how women have been leading through these times. Our moderator for this session is Dr. Heather Cluley, who is a professor in our graduate human resource development program at Villanova University, and whose research interests and courses that she teaches focus on issues of work and life. I'm going to turn it over to Heather in a moment to introduce each of our panelists, but I also want to add my thanks to the committee at the Institute that has been working to create this panel session, and my own personal thanks to each of the panelists for participating in this. It's definitely been an interesting year, and this is one of the culminating projects that we've been working on. So Heather, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So today's panel is, as Terry said, a discussion about navigating work and life in a global pandemic. Even pre-COVID, navigating work and life was one of the most challenging aspects of our life. As she said, I am a work family researcher myself. I've studied the day-to-day decisions of working couples, things like whose turn is it to take a sick day when a kid is sick home from school, or how do members of a couple flex their schedules to meet a school bus that runs in the middle of a workday. My participants described to me the organizations and leaders that supported their needs or didn't, their elaborate work-life routines that usually didn't leave much room for social life or recuperation, and the importance of their work, not just to pay the mortgage, but as a source of pride and self-definition. This crisis has amplified these issues for many people. The boundaries between work and other aspects of life are completely blurred. For some, and the supports we would normally rely on, such as schools, childcare, elder care, even house cleaning services, are unreliable and unavailable at this time. We're struggling to keep each other safe and healthy while also trying to meet the demands of our busy lives. And women have especially borne the brunt of upheaval, as Dr. Boyer had suggested. Over 800,000 women have left the workforce, many because of conflicts between work and other life roles. That's 4 times the rate that men have been leaving the workforce during this time. Today's panel discussion features women leaders from organizations and industries particularly impacted by the quarantine from a work-life perspective. You can read their full and impressive bios on the Institute's website. I'll put the website link in the chat for just as a reminder to you where to find that. But without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have Dr. Donna Havens, the endowed dean of the Fitzpatrick College of Nursing at Villanova. She's spent over 30 plus years in academia and healthcare leadership and is currently a primary investigator on the CHAMP study. This is a national study exploring the emotional and physical impact on essential healthcare workers who are delivering care during the COVID pandemic. We've got Nina Tinari, who's the president of Schulson Collective, a restaurant group in Philadelphia, which includes inspired venues such as Osteria and Harp and Crown. She also serves as a commissioner on the Mayor's Commission for Women. a member of the Forum for Women, Executive Women, and on the board of directors for the Philadelphia Sports Congress. We've got Captain Julia O'Brien of the United States Marine Corps. She's operations officer for the Marine for Life Network, which offers Marines and families transitions to employment, education, and other resources. And she probably doesn't know this, but she and I obtained our master's degree from the same university. However, she went on to become a decorated military officer, and I didn't. We have Kim Freites Dow, the CEO of Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania. Under her leadership, the organization has earned top 10 status nationally for girls and adult membership. She's held diverse roles in nonprofit leadership, including work at our beloved Franklin Institute prior to her executive leadership role at the Girl Scouts. And lastly, we have Colleen Finney-Burke, who is now the Senior Director of Intellectual Property Protection and Licensing at the Boeing Company. So she leads the licensing arm of Boeing's business worldwide. But she's been at Boeing for close to 30 years and has held various positions utilizing her Villanova degree in mechanical engineering and her Villanova MBA. So we have leadership representation here from a wide variety of industries that were impacted in different ways over the last few months. There are many aspects of the current situation that are utterly outside of our control, and it's easy to feel a little hopeless. Hopefully today we'll talk about some of those ways to be hopeful and some things that their leadership has shown ways to help in these situations. We'd like to kick off the panel by hearing how leaders are faced by this kind of uncertainty and disruption and how they've created something to address it, how they've supported their employees, their clients, and everyone during this time. I wanted to start with Donna because she's in healthcare, and we know that those frontline workers are really especially hit hard. So what are you seeing in healthcare, Donna? And what are some of the programs that you've seen put in place to address the emerging needs of healthcare workers during this time?
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. So in my role, I really oversee people in higher education. We're trying to go forth in this pandemic to run a university and to educate the next generation of healthcare workers. So we're also dealing with issues related to students and parents and faculty and staff and those who are actively practicing in the healthcare field. In the college itself, and I think you may ask me about the study a little later on, so I'll tell you what we're doing here in the university. So in the College of Nursing itself, we have lost more than people have reported more than 22 deaths amongst relatives, friends. It's really, really been striking and startling. There are some weeks when I've had to send out 3 death notices a week. And so people are experiencing great, great loss. Somebody's burying 2 parents next weekend. So it's not all were related to COVID, but many, many were. So that's another piece that maybe people aren't talking about, but it is definitely taking a toll on people left in the workforce. We have a faculty member who is a registered counselor who, with the leadership of our vice dean and some other folks, will be offering some group counseling sessions to our faculty and staff, basically focused on how to get through the holidays, still in a pandemic, and yet suffering such loss and missing people from the dinner table. In terms of the rest of our group here, we Zoom every day, all day, about many things. We've had cocktail hours. We've had lessons on how to cook with your children during COVID by our dietetic faculty. We've had a lot of town halls. You name the group and the constituents, and there's been a town hall for them. We even met with students through town hall format the entire spring semester. And every time I mentioned, do you want to dial it back? Is this too much? No, they wanted to keep coming. They needed that. They had questions. And you mentioned uncertainty in your lead in. That's a huge stressor that I don't think we're talking enough about either. It's uncertainty and how everything changes every day, just when you think you've got it nailed. something else is going to change. So we've been listening to people, we've been communicating with people and tried to be there for folks.
Julie, I wanted to move you over to you in terms of what's going on with the Marines and the Marine for Life programming.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for dialing in. I first want to say a disclaimer that everything that I'm saying is just my own personal experience and opinions, and I do not speak on behalf of the Marine Corps. From what I've been seeing is we still have missions going on. We still have deployments. We still have changes at duty stations that are happening. And within my own small circle, we've just been trying to keep up communication, like the other leaders are saying, with our team members. During our all hands staff meeting of about 30 members, usually we were just briefing, professional updates. We switched to just briefing one professional update and one personal update, which actually made the meetings much more enjoyable, of all of us sharing, one personal update as well. And going into the holidays, for our last all hands meeting, we shared, recommendations for different types of turkeys. And that's been, again, a good opportunity for us to continue communicating with each other as well.
Kim, at the Girl Scouts, you serve youth and their families. Some of that programming includes things like summer camps. What's happening at the Girl Scouts? How did you have to come to meet this challenge?
I echo everybody. Thank you again, Heather and Terry and everybody at Villanova for inviting me to participate and to be a part of the panel. At Girl Scouts, we've been around for 108 years, and we sort of have traditional ways of doing things. So I will say that one of the biggest points of pride that I have in working through COVID and virtual experiences is how our organization, our staff, our board, our members, our troop leaders pivoted to virtual. And that I think that one of the ways we combat uncertainty is because we've made it this far. So I think that, even though we're all dealing with we're almost back to in person and we're going back virtual, and we know we can do it. So I just want to say that. So we pivoted to virtual Girl Scout programming for girls and for our volunteers. At Girl Scouts, for girls, we had virtual badge earning opportunities starting in late March through the end of June. We had 10,000 girls participate in those programs virtually, just in that short period of time, just in our council. And then for summer, we had Camp at Home, which was a virtual camp experience that included things like a program in a box. So I don't know about all of you, but I get super excited when my Amazon package comes. And what I know is that my children, thank God, don't have access to my credit card, so they don't get those boxes. But our girls this summer for Camp at Home, they got those boxes, and they were boxes just for them that included the program booklet for the week, as well as all kinds of really fun things for do-it-yourself projects and just surprises in a box. So that was really important and fun. We've also provided things like racial justice town halls. Our girls want to talk about things that are impacting them, and they asked for that. So we just had a really amazing panel discussion with high schoolers that Terry Boyer, one of our board members, helped to set up and participate in. So girls are doing meaningful things, earning badges and increasing their leadership skills, and also talking with each other. I also think that for our adults in particular, so our troop leaders, giving them tools and resources to be able to do programs online has been important. And also making sure that the community is at the center of everything that we do. So whereas a leader might not be able to do one more thing, who else in her community of Girl Scouting can help, and really trying to connect lifetime members, alumni, and believe it or not, older girls who are much more tech savvy than some of the rest of us. How can they help to deliver the programs to the younger girls? So those are some of the things that we've been doing.
Wow. You mentioned the town halls. We've actually done some of those as well on our staff, and it's incredible how people just don't need an agenda, but they need a forum to talk. So there are also, Colleen and Nina, you work in industries where there's been closures and shutdowns and slowdowns. What have you done to support the employees during this this change in the industries for you? Colleen, do you want to kick us off, and then Nina?
Sure, happy to do that. So thanks, Heather, for the introduction. And as you mentioned, I've worked for the Boeing company for close to 30 years. And I'll give the same disclaimer that Julia does. These are my personal views and what I've seen. But in general, Boeing is an amazing company. And I've actually been there for more years of my life, you know, that I've worked there than I haven't worked there, which is interesting to actually think about. But the company is going through a very difficult period right now in the aftermath of the 2 737 MAX accidents. That was coincident with an unprecedented downturn in the industry globally. For those who may not be as aware, this is by far the worst aviation crisis in history, wiping out tens of thousands of jobs across the industry and uncountable billions in revenue. The latest projections are the industry will lose more than $80 billion this year, which is really significant. Back in late April, we all kind of remember what happened in March, April timeframe, and the passenger traffic was down worldwide 94% lower than the previous year. So in those levels, they don't expect to get to pre-pandemic levels until at least 2023, maybe 2024, or even 2025. So for the airlines, it's really just about surviving. And since Boeing makes airplanes, this greatly affects us. So we started the year as a 160,000 person company. And in April, we announced a 10% reduction, with most of those coming from the commercial and corporate sides, which is where I work. And it was a combination of voluntary and involuntary layoffs. And in May, a month after the first wave of headcount reductions came down, my organization was reset under a new senior VP. So we moved to a whole new department, more change. And so on top of dealing with the layoffs, we had to onboard new leaders and new expectations. Then in the recent earnings report, our CEO announced a series of actions related to how we'll transform the company. And that included more layoffs coming again in 2021. So over the last 8 months, I've lost 25% of my team, with some parts of the team being cut even more significantly than that. The workload isn't really less, it's just that people have to do it. And now all of us are working an enormous amount of hours. And of course, the team's working from home since March, so that adds stress for those who need to navigate that situation. And to pile on as if we needed more, our leadership recently just announced a whole reset within our organizational structure. So I'm personally now on my 3rd boss in a year and a half. So it's been a lot of change all at once in a very short amount of time. And so, Heather, you asked about a few things that were helpful to me, and I would say to how to support my managers and employees. 3 things that came out for me was to listen and communicate, to know what the team needs, and to demonstrate empathy. Because we've all been inundated with all the news and the numbers, and it's hard to be productive when there's so many distractions. But balancing the amount of information for the team was key. Knowing what the company was providing to us in terms of insights, making sure that we gave our team the latest data and distilling that down to what they needed. Because information is power, and sharing it past that feeling of power to the team. And then knowing what people want to hear is also key. So on the COVID side, they tend to want to know the numbers that impact them, not just the big numbers you hear on the evening news, but the number of cases at each Boeing site, for example. And we were able to provide a lot of that to them because the company is very well coordinated on all of this information. But they want to know the actions that the company's taking, whether it's in terms of health or safety, or decisions that are being made to recalibrate on infrastructure, organizational realignments, et cetera. Again, that information is power thing. One thing that I found out quickly is that words really matter. So I've needed to sensitize myself and even my new boss to this point. And as we went through the first round of layoffs, which hit about 20% of the team, our previous leader was asked if there were any more coming, and he innocently noted a few words. You know, he said, "Oh, well, there might be some cleanup or whatever," but that just sent the rumor mill flying, right? So as a result of that, my next two all-team meetings, I've spent hours scripting out words that I would use. How do I want to phrase this? How do I want to say this? Every word mattered when people are hypersensitive to hearing bad news, especially, because that certainly tends to spread quickly. And that means you need to sharpen your whack-a-mole skills, right? So make sure that you're on top of untrue rumors and kind of squash them down, sometimes sternly with the team, quite frankly, but communicating what you know, when you know it, helps to build that trust up with the individuals. And then lastly, I mentioned the importance of outwardly demonstrating empathy. And each time I would talk with the team, I would just start and end by recognizing that this situation is really difficult professionally and personally, and that we're all feeling it. So just, being genuine with the team and spending a lot of time helping personally to guide the managers as they led their teams. It was hours on the phone talking to them, sometimes kind of talking them down a little bit off a ledge, but being and helping them realize I mentioned to them, what's the words of the serenity prayer, right? Whether you're religious or not, with so many things out of our control, there is real value in recognizing the concept of trying to accept the things that you cannot change and encourage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, those themes of communication, intentional communication and listening, lots of listening, really honing those leadership skills this time. And Nina, I understand the restaurant group has been supporting people who are not coming to work, as well as those that are. So tell us about some of the programs that you've got going on.
So I just wanted to thank everyone today for including me on this panel, and welcome everyone this afternoon. So I want to piggyback on a few of key points that Colleen mentioned, which I think are critical. And one of the things is communication. One of the very most important things for me at the collective was that when this pandemic hit, which was of global proportions, we wanted to make sure our messaging was clear and concise and empathetic, because during a time of uncertainty, everyone needs to know what's going on. And that was super important for us. And we found that by doing that through how we communicated with the media, with our own employees, with team leaders, with our stakeholders, and anyone else that was going to be impacted. Because keeping our employees and our guests was extremely important. Keeping our employees and guests safe was extremely important during this time. And we actually closed and shut down our operations prior to the mayor and the governor announcing the plan in the city in March, because we were already concerned with how we were going to manage that effectively. And in doing that, we did that with communication. A couple of the things that we found, though, during this with our employees was that there was a lot of food insecurity at the time. Resources, as we all saw, you couldn't get paper towels or toilet paper or some of the basic items that we were accustomed to getting. And so what our team did at the collective was we actually created provision boxes and set up a market and worked with our vendors and purchased all of these items for any of our employees to come and pick them up. So they were in a position where they would not be food insecure. One of the other important things we did, I think, was we did a non-binary approach rather than a binary approach when addressing issues such as layoffs and in particular. So it wasn't like we were going to do a whole big round of layoffs. It was, how do we reduce our workforce in a way that we remain effective and efficient? How do we potentially reduce our salaries at the C-suite so we're not impacting everyone? And it was challenging, but I think the more options in these discussions are better than your traditional approaches, which we found to be beneficial for us. And then lastly, I think what Colleen said, and I can't hit home enough about it, I think how you deliver your message matters, what your message is matters, because today, with everyone being so uncertain of what their future holds, having honest, clear, concise, and simple communication really, really, really matters. And I think we learned from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, several of you mentioned before we spoke some ways that you're doing that. Donna, you talked about daily huddles.
Yes, yes.
You want to talk about
So
those?
in healthcare, it's very common that in a healthcare organization, the team will get together at least once a day to huddle. And it's a time when people bring things forward that the rest of the team needs to know about, whether it's safety or quality or whatever. And so we implemented daily huddles here in the College of Nursing about a week before March 13th, when we all walked out of the building. Gathered all of the leadership, everyone in charge of every program, key staff and faculty who needed to know, came to our daily huddles, and it lasted about an hour. And we shared the news. We communicated openly, accurately, frequently. And this went on daily for about 2 months, 3 months, at which point I said, again, do you want to meet less frequently? And people said, no, we need to do this. We want the information every day. And one person said, this is like being at the water cooler. This is our water cooler. And they could not give that up. Finally, we went to 3 days a week, and now we're meeting every other week. But 8 months into this, we're still gathering the same folks for our daily huddles.
Wow. Any other examples of the sort of a different route to communication? Julia, you had mentioned that you've changed from what's the update to what's your work update and what's your personal update.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the phrases that I've heard in the past during some leadership training is, what do I know? Who needs to know it? And have I told them yet? And that's a phrase I continually repeat throughout my head about, what do I know? Who needs to know it? Have I told them yet? And during our weekly all hands calls, we're just passing like professional updates, work updates. But we had started also updating, just do your biggest rock, your biggest work update. And then also please share a professional update, and people's faces on our Microsoft Teams grid would light up when they got to their personal update. And yeah, for leaders, I think right now it's, being a leader is having your staff, if they need you, and you're there for them. Once we come out of it's going to speak volumes of your staff knowing that I needed you and you were there for me. So I liked what one of the other speakers said about starting and ending with empathy, and then also being engaged and communicating throughout the process as well.
Kim, last time we talked, you said these jobs aren't for the faint of heart right now. You were talking about women in executive leadership roles like all of you are. What are some pressure points you're seeing? And maybe some feedback from your clientele, your youth and your families.
Yeah, so I think that in one of our pre-chats, somebody was talking about how crises amplify inequities. And I think that is true socially, and it's also true at work. So for people like myself, I have the opportunity to hire folks to help me out. Not everybody has that opportunity or capacity financially. So I think that that's really important to understand. I think it's really important to talk about, to Nina and Colleen's point, how do you have these honest dialogues with people? And then how do you work with them to create flexible opportunities, whether it's, early morning, late at night, not during the school day, or maybe it's, I can only work 75% of my hours right now. Is that possible? I can only work 50% of my hours. Is that possible? So I know that we've come up with creative solutions for folks. certainly giving them access and information about the opportunities that our government has provided, but also creating flexible opportunities within our own organization for people to continue to work, but to work outside of the norms that we normally have, I think has been really important. You know, in the leadership roles that we all have, it's a lot of pressure. It's important that we role model for our teams. We want to make sure that people know that they can take time off and prioritize their personal health and well-being. And we also want to make sure that people are confident that we know what we're doing right now and that their financial security and the organization's financial security is in control. So I think there's a lot of challenges that we have as leaders of organizations. So I know personally I have a lot of outlets for folks that maybe are not directly within my organization to make sure that I have sounding boards. I'm part of a group of the top 10 CEOs and Girl Scouts around the country, you know, people in all the major cities, and we meet weekly for an hour. And some of that time, you know, to Donna's point, is just the water cooler. How's it going? Are you okay? And other things are best practices and things that we can share to help each other out. So I think those things are really important as we all navigate mental health and wellness during these times, and just checking in with people, making sure that your management team is okay. Not everybody is always okay. And how do you acknowledge that, lift people up, and create opportunities for flexibility?
I do want to touch on those ideas of self-care and mental health. But before we do, Donna, you did promise that you would talk about your study and what your preliminary findings in terms of what pressure points you're seeing in healthcare.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So in April, a group of us in the College of Nursing became very aware of what was happening to healthcare providers across the board, not just nurses, physicians, but EMTs, fire persons, police persons, even those who clean the rooms in healthcare organizations, because they were under fire also. So we launched what we're calling the CHAMPS, CHAMPS, the National CHAMPS Study, to assess the emotional and physical well-being of all of those people. And if anyone's interested, you can go to the Villanova College of Nursing website and see the link. We really are recruiting. We did this, you talked about pivoting. We did this without funding. We just sort of decided to do it. We've given our time. We meet every Monday morning for 2 hours and have since April. And this study's moving along. It's a longitudinal look at all of these people over time, but it started with a survey of their emotional well-being. And we have about close to 2,000 people participating, which is pretty good, but we want to go much higher. Because we have no money to do recruiting professionally, we're using social media, word of mouth. It's actually a respectable technique for sampling called snowball sampling. Somebody does it and they tell somebody else and they tell somebody else. So we have people from almost every state in the nation. It's been quite exciting, but we were worried about what we would see about the emotional toll on these folks. And unfortunately, our concerns were seen. We did realize this. We, so far, according to the International Council on Nurses alone, more than 1,500 nurses internationally have died during COVID. Delivering care to people, brought it home. So we found preliminarily, we looked at 1,000 nurses from the height of the first surge, and we found 54% reported symptoms of moderate depression, 52% moderate traumatic stress leading to PTSD, 35% severe anxiety, and 31% moderate to severe insomnia. They couldn't sleep when they finally did go home, just reliving what they had been through. These percentages, I'm telling you, and the scores that people gave us or reported could be classified as needing clinical assistance. if they were seeing a professional healthcare worker. This is frightening, what is happening to these people. And now you're hearing, we also asked them to tell us things. There were spaces on the questionnaire, and this was chilling. They reported feeling frustrated, lonely, and stressed. They were working in unfamiliar settings. People from all fields were being brought into different clinical areas that they had never worked in before. They were afraid to go home because they worried about infecting their loved ones. So some stayed with friends or stayed in hotels and talked about calling their children on the phone to wish them a happy birthday. They wanted to be able one day to enjoy their profession again. That was chilling to me, and that they're haunted. They used the word haunted by the COVID experience and caring for their coworkers who died while they were caring for them. So when you think about the stress that these people are dealing with, very concerned about what's going to happen after the pandemic. Will these people still want to practice and work in healthcare? Some are telling us, no, they're done. This is over. They're going to get through this and then they're out. And now we're beginning to hear what's happening to them, what they're hearing, how frustrated they are with people not following CDC guidelines and all, and they're wondering, why am I doing this? What have I given up and why? So it's a very big concern. There's truly a need for interventions for these folks at all levels, and that is really the next step we need to get going. The one last chilling thing I'll tell you is they feel like they went from being heroes to zeros. Now that it's been so long and everything's ramping up again, they're feeling like a zero. People cared, they cheered when they left work, and that doesn't happen anymore. And now they're dealing with all of these other doubts. It's very, very chilling. So that's what we're learning right now. We hope to go on for several years, but not good news.
It's really chilling. Julia, you had mentioned some sort of practical ways that the Marine Corps helps with monitoring mental health and keeping people even physically fit. Maybe
Yes.
something positive that way?
Yes, for the military, I mean, not unique to the military, the term triage of care, starting with self-aid and buddy aid, we're very familiar talking about those sorts of terms, if it's, bandaging up a fellow Marine, like removing a splinter, those sorts of things. And we all understand that you have to remove, the splinter soon or it will, fester and get infected. But, triage of care for mental health, it is, can also be treated, self-aid, buddy aid style. And it does play a very important role for the overall, for your personal fitness and then also the unit's readiness. So just being able to like destigmatize, triage of mental health care with starting with self-aid, buddy aid, recognizing you're not sleeping at night and then, self-reporting it to your peers or to that next level leader and having that next level leader take that information and be able to provide, proper assistance, be able to provide proper triage and get you help. We also, beyond that self-aid and buddy aid, we have chaplains that are embedded at a lot of our units. And then we also have counselors on and off base that are able to provide kind of that second echelon of care. But getting people to recognize that they do need support and that weight they're carrying that during this time can just, it keeps building and building. And, we might be becoming used to it. It's important to lean on our buddies and recognize that if we are having, indicators, especially with not sleeping, that we are reporting that. And also for leaders at every level to be knowing the different risk factors and knowing different warning signs related to behavioral health and being able to support our peers and to support the people that we work with. And yeah, just the general topic of triage of care around mental health, I feel like starts with the self-aid and buddy aid piece of it.
Great. I don't know about you, but for those of us who are working from home and our full teams are at home, I think it's a little harder to monitor. When you talk about the buddy system, even the people I'm close to at work, I don't see them. I don't, aside from in a meeting with a group of people. So what about those of you who are sort of working virtually? How are you mentally and physically and doing all kinds of self-care? How are you and you role modeling this, and how are you working this out with your communities?
Well,
Colleen, you had and I had mentioned ideas about physical fitness. I talked about my boss who just blocks out his lunch hours to go for long runs. So it's on his calendar, we can see it. Me, I've been using Amazon Prime workout videos. There's some good ones there. So I definitely need to be physically active to be mentally healthy. I really need that. I take it out on my family otherwise. Colleen, you had some ideas as well.
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Heather. As you mentioned, we're all really running blended lives right now for those of us who are working from home. And it can be a struggle to mentally separate those things. So working from home, personally, I just needed to give myself permission to step away and not feel the constant need to be online, because usually I do. And so I've made it a routine to take a walk in the evening with my husband. He actually works in the office and is essential personnel, so he has to go in. So I don't see him all day long. And it's a great opportunity for us to connect. And I appreciate when he comes home. And so we have like a 2-mile loop that we do. It may be totally dark by the time that we get out there and I shut down, but we just bring a flashlight and still, I just want to get out of the house. Just makes me feel a little bit better. Hang up with my managers that doesn't require us to be online, and I kind of look for those opportunities. I'll ask up front, do you mind if we do this as a walking meeting? And they love it, right? So you just get the blood moving, you get a little bit of sun, it's sunny. A lot of them work in Seattle, it's not always sunny up there. But in many cases, just to get out and get some fresh air. And for me, midsummer, I discovered that I hit my max in terms of paid time off. And so now I was losing hours, right? That normally I would have been credited. So I had set aside a week in August when my sister's family was supposed to come and visit, but she canceled due to an uptick in COVID, which, certainly I understand. But surprisingly, when she called to tell me that she wasn't coming, I burst into tears. I was so surprised by my own reaction, but I was carrying so much more stress than I realized, and my body just reacted. And I knew I needed a break, and so I held the week already. I still held the week. We did a very last minute trip to Olympic National Park in Washington State, and the getaway made a world of difference to me. It just allowed me to be a better manager when I came back, to more easily handle things, just because I took that small little break and gave myself, again, permission to do that. In addition, in the fall, I woke up to the fact that I'm very behind when it comes to all that discretionary medical appointments that you're supposed to set up during the year. We all have them. So just within the past few weeks, I forced myself to catch up with several wellness visits, had some dental work and one of those whole body dermatology screenings. So that screening resulted in them finding 2 basal cell carcinomas, which is the explanation for the bohemian looking Band-Aids that I have on my forehead up here. This is not some accessory. They are a better choice than the Frankenstein look that I have at the moment, but with the stitches, but it is important. I stepped back, I actually talked to my team about it and said, look, I finally took the time to do this for myself, and this is the result. So please don't hold back on those things. Please take that time for yourself. And lastly, I would mention to make sure that you know who your support people are and use them, right? So we all have support structures. My husband is a daily, solid supporter for me, but there's some things that I need sometimes, some different people on. So I'll pull on a different member of my personal board of directors. And if you haven't established one yet, this might be a good time to consider, that for yourself. I have a close friend, her name's Andrea Kane Frank, and she's a mental health professional who has been focused on promoting kindness in all facets of our lives. we've been close friends since high school, so she really knows me, and she helps me connect with myself and reminds me of the importance of self-compassion. And she happened to call me a few weeks ago at one point when I was really feeling the burden of my job. And she told me that if I keep on this path, my body will tell me that it's not going to work. And so it just kind of, made me take a step back and think about that. And she also offered a mantra that I've been reflecting on that I wanted to share with you, which is to determine the life that you want. The choices are already there. I wrote that down for myself, and I've been, thinking about it and reflecting on it. I am obviously a work in progress here, but thought I would share those thoughts in hopes that reflecting on this for yourselves might be a little helpful.
I like that.
Could I build on something Colleen said? Colleen, that's so important. So many people are not keeping those routine healthcare appointments. They're afraid of going into an office and contracting COVID, and cancers aren't being picked up. Mammograms aren't taking place, all kinds of screening. And that's so important because when healthcare workers see those people now, it's often advanced and it's frightening for everybody. So we have to really help impart that message to the people we're working with.
Anecdotally, unlike you, Donna, we haven't known a lot of people who have been suffering from ill effects of COVID, but we do know several, I'd say more than several people who have more advanced stage cancers at this point that I don't know that would have been the case if they had been properly screened. So I completely, just in my own little bubble, I've definitely seen that. I want to shift to some rays of sunshine and hope as we close. Wanted to close by exploring some thoughts about key lessons we've learned, what we hope society has learned from navigating work and life during this global pandemic. What you hope we'll take away from this experience. And I wanted to start with Nina. I know you've had this background in government relations and policy and politics that you brought to the hospitality industry. So I wanted to hear about some things that some way you've used those experiences in a new industry, and then as a woman in a leadership role, how you hope what we'll learn, what will come out of this, what we'll do differently in the future.
Sure. Yeah, prior to working in hospitality, I was in government relations, in government, and doing some and policy as well as politics. And sometimes in those industries, you really need to be a strategic thinker. But when I transitioned from those industries into hospitality, and particularly in restaurants, everyone works in the moment because there are issues and things that need to be addressed right at the moment. A guest is unhappy with their table. They don't like their food that was prepared. And so it's a very quick, immediate response and how to resolve it to make the guest happy. But what sometimes gets lost in hospitality is what does that look like long-term? And I think COVID allowed us to think beyond the moment and create a strategy of how we survive long-term, because just like Boeing, the hospitality industry has been decimated across the country. And every day is we're surviving. There were new restrictions that were just put in place by the city. So we're under a lot of pressure. And I think for me in particular, what I found is I don't have, or I did not have, a very healthy work-life balance. I think my whole life was consumed with work from the day I probably got out of school. And for me, the important thing was to find time to reconnect with my friends and family, to read. I'm an avid reader, but read more. We did a lot of things within the company, such as we continued our weekly meetings. We had director and C-suite meetings. We kept that. And what many people on the panel did was it wasn't just about all work. It was really sometimes an opportunity to discuss what was going on personally at home and how everyone was managing everyone in my household is at home. What am I going to do? I can't believe this is happening. And so for me personally, I was a Division I athlete, so I'm a big team player. So taking walks, just like Colleen said, getting people to go out and walk, finding that 15 to 20 minutes of time to meditate in the morning, taking more time to personally benefit yourself so your day starts differently than you were accustomed to. I think those things have really helped. And the one thing I want to see, I think, after all of this is that there is less individualism in our society and more of a bigger and better focus on community, because as we see that this virus does not discriminate and we are all fighting this together, and as a community we'll be able to get through this, and I think that's really important to remember.
I'm going to go around my in order I see you. So Colleen, what do you hope we'll take away from this? What lessons will we learn?
Thanks, Heather. You know, despite all the negative behavior we see in the news, I've personally just in my neighborhood, witnessed many examples of where people have been proactive in reaching out to others, like shut-ins or older people who are concerned. I'm really hoping that that might become a bit more of a habit with people. That outreach has really made me feel good about it. And then second thing I would mention, just from a societal perspective, as people are finding that they don't need to live in the immediate vicinity of their office. We've all read the articles about people moving away in droves from large urban areas like San Francisco or New York City, recognizing they could live anywhere because they're working virtually. So as they move to these new areas, they're going to experience new spaces primarily across the US. And I'm really hopeful that that shift, that purposeful shift, helps them to begin to realize how connected we all really are, and that we're all more alike than we're different. And if they can grow an appreciation for those with different backgrounds because they're now living in those different communities, those viewpoints may lead to more tolerance. It's certainly going to take time, but there is a little bit of hope there as people are doing this purposefully for themselves and exposing themselves to these other areas.
I like that. And building on that, we could also have a shift in, we don't all need full-time work. Some of us could be more gratified by part-time work. And we've seen how it's either in or out of the workforce and at this time. That's shifting. So Kim, you talked about some programs that you were doing with flexibility. I think we could be a more inclusive place if we shifted both geographic and the schedules. Kim, what do you hope for our future?
So to piggyback, common ground. You talk about female leadership. We always talk about empathy being a part of female leadership. And I wonder oftentimes if it always shows up. And I think that now this is really an opportunity for us to reconnect with who we are. To Colleen's point, the determining the life that you want. It's also just reconnecting with who you really are. What are the things that really drive you? Who are the people that really matter? How do you prioritize those things about yourself? So kind of like Nina was saying, I was reconnecting with things that I haven't reconnected with in a long time. My clarinet, for instance, I went to school for that. I've been practicing and playing and creating in that sense. And I think as leaders, if we think about those ideals, how does that show up when you're doing problem solving? Are you really looking for the common ground when you're problem solving? How do you have the community at the center of the solutions that you come up with? So maybe that includes also, to Nina's point, the strategy. Are you redefining what success looks like? Is it different than the metrics that you were normally looking at? How does that show up? And how do you help your team feel like they're a part of that? And redefining the success, and then really recognizing it when you achieve it. I think those things are really important. Also around the travel, I spent 7 weeks with my parents this summer in Florida. I haven't lived with them for that long, in a really long time. I was able to work every day, and to just be there was so important and filled me up. I think it filled them up too, and my kids. So just finding those types of things that fill you up, I think is an opportunity.
And Julia?
I think it's been encouraging seeing employers promoting flexibility and problem solving, having a lot of creative solutions to adapt and overcome and to accomplish the mission. For the phrase mission first, Marines or people always. I think we're seeing that if a personal matter needs attention, that we are able to step in and take care of that, and that doesn't mean that the mission isn't getting taken care of. Mission is getting taken care of, and then your family and your work, your personal life can also get done as long as there's flexibility and creative solutions in place. And it is encouraging to see technology being able to facilitate making that happen as well.
And Donna, what do you hope for our future?
I hope this has taught everyone, especially the work world, that there are different ways to do things. I like to talk about, I think possibility thinking has become a very big notion. What if, how come, how could we? I like to ask people, what would right look like? And I think that just opens up a whole new way of thinking, co-designing the work to be done with the person doing the work. So that, it's not about seat time, and many work roles were about seat time, but it's about a different way of being productive and maybe deciding on what productivity means. I think we've all learned so much through virtual work. I just love seeing people in their homes with their kids saying, Mommy, I need the computer now, I have to go to school, or another child coming in and this word mean? I mean, it just makes us all laugh, but it's the human side of it. And we've just all come to get to know our coworkers in a very different way. And I hope we take all of this with us forward.
So the questions continue, but they're not mine. So we're going to switch to some audience-generated questions. The first one is for you, Donna, so you can stay on. I'm at microphone on. Before the pandemic, I worked in the hospitals as a medical interpreter, freelance. Now I work from home doing interpreting telephonically or through video. The agencies that employ freelancers like me are starting to ask and expect that we will soon go back to working face-to-face. But they are not giving proper training to know how to do on and off PPE or other training to limit exposure to viruses. How can we schedule a webinar with PPE expert for medical interpreters? And can bridge the professional organization, bring it to the professional organization for interpreters. And this is bridging on that question. When is it the right time to call people back in? I mean, is it what needs to happen? Is it too soon?
I think we have to pay attention to science. I'm one of those people. We have to pay attention to science and what it tells us. It will tell us when we're ready. The CDC, governors, other groups are all paying attention to science. We can't sacrifice people and send them in before we're ready. And when they go in, they have to have the right equipment. They have to be safe. A lot of healthcare workers, and I include interpreters in this, have told us they feel like they've gone into battle wearing a baseball cap and flip-flops, and that cannot happen. So to this person, I think there are people who could offer such a thing. And in fact, when this is over, I'm going to go talk with our continuing education department, who offers many programs online. And it's a great idea. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, so that one has to do with research. It's been really difficult to separate work from home since I've been working from home. What are some ways I can shut off my brain to not continue working at the end of the day? So this has been mentioned. I think any of you could offer solutions. So anybody have ideas?
I can just offer, that there's going to be days where you can't, and then there's going to be days where you have to. And I think that for me, I will go for a run and I'll listen to a book on tape. And sometimes the book on tape is helping me to be educated on the current racial injustice in the country, things that I find important, but I don't have the time to do maybe necessarily while I'm constantly connected to Zooms or whatever. And then other days I'll just listen to Def Leppard, Pandora. I mean, it kind of just changes from day to day. You got to just give yourself the opportunity to know that if a day looks like 8 to 8 meetings and you haven't been able to disconnect, that's okay. But take some time in the balance of the week to make sure that it's not every day. So I think that there are certain things that you can control and certain things that you can't. I know for me, I also did a diet because I could control it. This is what I'm going to eat for the next 30 days, and this is what I'm not going to eat. That felt really good to me. I'm not typically the person who is out of control like that, but right now there's so much not in our control. So it's kind of like, what are some of those little things that you can either schedule or choices that you can make, you can control to make yourself feel a little bit better?
Anybody else?
I do think, I love what you're saying, Kim. I do think that there is more blurring, though, of lines between what is the business day and what is the personal time, especially with folks working from home who are homeschooling. They may not get to something till 8 or 9 at night, and they may need your input. So we do have to control it. We do have to give ourselves downtime, but we also have to be flexible because others may need us in that blurred time.
Yeah, Kim, I really liked what you said too, and I would add to it. I'm, blessed in the situation that I have in my home, and I have a little bit of space here, and I'm able to keep my office separate, right? So I don't go into that office unless I'm working. So mentally, it just says, okay, if I'm sitting here or I'm in this room, then I'm doing work. And when I leave this room, I try to leave there as much as I can, right? I mean, all of us have phones, but give yourself permission to do that and not look at the phone, and just try to be kind to yourself, right? If you need to, and you're working 11 hours or whatever that is, it's okay, right? That's what you're needed to do at that time. And don't feel frustrated that you're not doing something else. Just help to put some guardrails around that for yourself. And the last part is, I think you heard from several of the members here, is about exercise. It can be a 15-minute walk, right?
Yeah, you're lifting your chops there, punching yourself.
Out of the house and clear your head.
Yeah.
I find that as well. I do my best, if I'm not able to get a run in every day, to at least get outside for 15, 20 minutes for the fresh air. And we encourage our team to do that as well, because I think it matters. We're all really stuck inside all day long, in sometimes one room because of homeschooling, and there's not a lot of room, especially when you live in a city. I live in downtown Philadelphia in Center City, in a condo. So we don't always have that luxury of, going out into the backyard. So the parks have become some of my best friends. So I found some hiking trails, and we share that throughout the collective, because everyone is always looking for something. But I think I agree with everyone on the panel. To be more kind to yourself, I need to do a better job of that myself, and realizing that you can't control everything. For individuals who like to control everything, it's hard. So just be a little bit more kind to yourself and to others.
Research has also shown that if you just schedule it, like, it seems weird, and I have a shared schedule that my team sees, but I put my dance class on there. I mean, I lived in Canada for 10 years. I did a dance class for almost all of those 10 years. And my teacher emailed me and she said, hey, I'm doing some online classes on Tuesday nights. That's on my schedule now. I've missed that class for years, and now it's back. And it's sad I'm not in person, but I actually do it every week because it's just scheduled. If it were drop-in class, it'd be easy to forget about it. So one of the best ways to shut off work is to schedule something else during that time. And whether it's your run, whatever's important to you, if it's on your schedule, you'll probably do it. If you have it's called an implementation intention. So that works for me, is I honor it if it's on my schedule.
I definitely agree with that as well. Like scheduling in your own personal care time onto your schedule. And for myself, during the pandemic, I became a new mother, and breastfeeding, it's a daily obligation that I have to put on my schedule, and then also remain flexible. The baby has she thrives on having clear boundaries and a clear feeding and sleeping schedule, and working my schedule around that, and kind of having that balance of being disciplined but also flexible in your schedule. And early on I learned that you have to honor your own personal care obligations. I didn't do that, and I got mastitis, and it took me a week of feeling not very well and not performing at probably my optimal levels for me to really understand that you have to prioritize yourself and stick to those obligations, because otherwise your work will also suffer as well.
Like Colleen, you said your body will tell you, right?
Yeah, your body will.
That's right.
One way or another.
It's funny, when I sit too long, I have like a recurring sitting injury. So I have to change chairs throughout the day and do standing work and go for walks. And my body definitely tells me, gotta move. This one, coming to the idea of parenting, what models have panelists used to help support parents who are also teaching their children? So having those virtual schooling or homeschooling kids.
Sorry, can you say that again, Heather?
What programs are you using to support working parents who have kids who are either completely at home or part of the time at home?
I mean, a couple things that we're doing is having those real conversations, right? So I think a lot of times people are hesitant to say how challenging something is because they don't want to lose their job. So we actually had our HR team and also our DEI committee reach out to employees who we know have kids and just have conversations to see, are there things that you need? Is there, to Colleen's point, can we get you a workstation? Like, you don't have to use your dining room table. Whatever that would look like. Do you need modified hours? Do you want to take a few weeks off? I think that there's all kinds of opportunities if you open your mind to the flexibility. I think that we do have a few people currently who are working decreased percentage hours, and that has been like a life changer. So if you have to work 20 hours this week instead of 35, how do you figure that out? And how do we figure that out with you? I think that's been really important. It helps with how they come to work too, because they can control the schedule.
Anybody else?
Well, it's that flexibility and co-designing their work with them rather than focusing just on seat time, because they can't do that right now.
This question goes similarly, following up on that one. How do I do a better job saying no to management or coworkers while I'm swamped? I've gone through 3 rounds of layoffs since March 2020, which means new responsibilities and heavier workloads with no change in compensation. But I'm scared to say no. That's reality for a lot of people right now.
It is.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts on that. I would say it isn't always about saying no. Sometimes it's just about stepping back and recognizing what can you do and setting realistic expectations, right? So, and having those conversations with the people that you are that you're working with in that space. Because, you know, everyone is so stressed right now in so many different areas, and the changes are multiplying. And you know, I've even found when I would do some of these one-on-ones with my managers, there were times when a catalyst would trigger somebody to get emotional and they would just break down. And I remember thinking that my engineering degree did not actually prepare me for this. So that's when, you know, kind of humanity kicks in along with your leadership training, and the focus shifts to calmly dissecting the issue with them, helping them realize, because they're struggling with the same things you are. They don't want to say no when you're asking them to do things, or they're getting pressure to, you know, to make things happen on the team. And so you become one of those people who are actually pressuring others in some cases when you're a leader. And so recognizing when that pressure affects them just as much as it may you, because people are pressuring you. So, you know, one manager later talked to me and said she was embarrassed that she got so emotional in this conversation. And I told her that I was actually humbled by the fact that she trusted me enough to be open about her feelings. You know, the craziness of this moment in our history just really levels the playing field for everybody. Regardless of what level you are still just as vulnerable in every aspect, personally or professionally. You're still feeling those pressures. And at some moments it can become less about being the boss and more about being the person that can understand, you know, your team. And you're going to hope that, you know, your boss does the same for you. And just having those conversations is really what needs to happen, and setting those expectations.
I think part of being a good leader is also letting people see your vulnerabilities and being open and honest about it. That it's okay to have these feelings, and therefore back up also how you deal with it. But I think vulnerability is not a bad thing.
Also, during this time, I think everyone's dealing with the overwhelm and having task after task after task come in. So I'm not sure about what the specific situation is, but for your boss, if you do get new tasks on, I would ask for some clarification on prioritizing. So if you have a list of 5 tasks and then you are asked to do an additional, 10 tasks, ask them what they would like you to prioritize for you to get done that week. Like what are the top 5 things, or situation dependent. But if you're getting new tasks, I would recommend asking your boss for help prioritizing which ones that they need done sooner, because usually that task list is not going away, but you can tackle it in different chunks, and your boss can be the one to tell you which ones need to be done sooner. But not everything can be done at the same time.
I agree with that too, Julia. I think one of the things that, I've noticed pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, is that people don't like asking for help or acknowledging if they're overwhelmed. And that is a result of the culture that our whole country has, right? Some of it is related to your own workplace culture and leadership, but it also is just related to people thinking they should have to and need to do more. And so I would just say creating an environment where you can be honest about what's going on, and to Julia's point, prioritizing. I will say though that the challenge with that, right, and something that you could talk to your boss about is, what is critical? What is critical in these 5 things for the rest of the organization? And if there are things that I'm not able to do now, but have to be done now for other people, is there somewhere else that you can place this? Because I think that will also acknowledge that you are aware of how important your work is to the success of your whole organization.
Yeah, all good advice. I also, in my team, I take the time to mention my work and family roles and how they're constantly changing, because I know I'm in a safe position, but I need to role model that transparency, because I know that there are people on my team that don't have the same employment contract that I have. So I say it out loud because I'm like, nothing can happen to me, but the others need to be able to find their voice. And by me doing it, I think that they're able to do it better, because other people in the team don't have the same work family obligations that I do and a few others do with having small children at home at this time.
Mhm.
So role modeling it if you're in a safe space to be that vulnerable person.
And I think I've heard people say this, but it's really important to continue to do the things you find fun or that bring happiness to you. You know, my husband and I love getting dressed up and going out to dinner. Well, we're not doing that anymore, but we're still getting dressed up. We're still lighting candles on occasion, and we're still getting great takeaway, Nina, from great restaurants. And we're doing that. You know, we have date night every week, and those things mean a lot to us. And I just encourage everyone to maintain those good, healthy habits.
So interesting, we have two questions that are like sort of the flip side. One, as a working parent, I've always found balance by compartmentalizing work versus personal. And I'm extremely uncomfortable with my home, my sanctuary, my family now being on full display for coworkers. And on top of that, there seems to be a microscope on working parents like myself and questions about what can be done to help, which makes it worse, not better. So that discomfort in blending and blurring. And then another person saying, what's your advice for people who don't even have a dedicated office space at home? Like example, a room being used for multiple purposes where others in the house while I'm trying to work. So like the discomfort with having your life on display and then also not being able to separate. I don't know what I would do without a separate office space. And I do think that would be a hard situation. And I think one way to deal with it is a scheduling issue of like my space for now. Any other advice? Or for the other comment about, I don't want to be on display. I mean, as leaders, have you been faced with employees who are like, I just really want to keep that separation. Don't ask me about my family.
Definitely. I mean, I think we all have diverse workforces, and we have folks who love being on Zoom and people who hate it. So I think that, you know, we don't require cameras unless we require cameras. Like, and the only time we require a camera is if it's for some type of a one-on-one, you know, personal HR related something or other. But otherwise, cameras are optional. You don't have to be on camera. So you don't, and you can see my background, say rocket ship full of Girl Scout cookies. So you don't see like what's in my house. So we do supply these types of things for people to have a, you know, a veil of privacy. And I also think that it's up to all of us, employers and employees, to talk about what our boundaries and limits are in order for people to understand and be able to respect that. So I think it's possible in this environment to have what you need. I do think it can be challenging though for folks who are more introspective or who are more introverted to have to speak up on these types of things, whereas they could normally in the face-to-face environment do something more personal. But, you know, there's a spot for everybody.
You know, if I could add, I'm not aware of our faculty and staff feeling that way, but yes, we have had many students express concern, discomfort with having us see them on Zoom and what their backgrounds might be, or the family environment, or where they're trying to work. Some were embarrassed. And so we have to be very sensitive to that. And yes, cameras, we need to deal with that.
I don't want to seem old-fashioned, but I have been using the phone to actually make phone calls and have conversations or meetings when there's no requirement for us to share documents or that kind of thing. And I've had people giggle. I'm like, I'm gonna call you and we're gonna walk my dog together, so I can, be outside and we can accomplish everything we need to, and it's gonna be on the phone. And I think there's certain people that have like never had a phone conversation meeting, or those just aren't typical anymore. But I think there are things that we can accomplish in different modes. So that's one way to accomplish both, not having your private life on display, but also if you don't have an office space that's private, you can take your phone to another space.
Yes.
But working moms whose kids are fully virtual, it's a big thing. So I think
Yes.
headsets are really important. Even construction board kind of like dividers. It's not great for sound, but it could be, good for dividing up whose space is whose. I know a lot of people are at the same dining room table, and so just having your space that you can decorate yourself, and having your kids have that same opportunity. Those are just simple little things, but you can put quotes up that inspire you and things like that, just to, kind of, I don't know, create your own personal space. I also wouldn't hesitate to ask your employer if there's something else that you need, whether it's a wireless headset or a stand-up desk or something like that. We're very open to providing those types of things for folks.
Yeah, getting my child a headset for her classes at home has been really great for us. So not just me having a headset, but her, cuts down on the overlap.
Absolutely. I let my kids pick their own, whatever colors they wanted, you can make it fun.
I also set up a Google account for her. Nobody has the email address, but it allowed her to have a chat. So we actually text each other from different rooms, meaning it doesn't interrupt as much. So that's been helpful to communicate with a small child, just quick stuff that she doesn't have to interrupt me and be in my meeting. So those are all little things you can do, but it is challenging for everyone at this time. Terry, you're back. That means we're finishing the questions.
Just a few minutes left. Yeah, if we want to take maybe one more question, and then I was going to close by talking a little bit about the workshop that will follow this.
Actually, we got through most of the questions. We had a quick one about, for Donna, about how are you assessing emotional well-being in your study? And then one just about being able to keep up working relationships and networking during the pandemic. So maybe we can close with, Donna, you can talk about just specifically how you're assessing that, and then maybe some ideas for the social element of networking with colleagues.
So for each of those outcomes I mentioned, we're using validated, reliable, accessible, acceptable instruments that are used in many other studies. And we were very strategic about using the same instruments to measure those concepts that are being used in other studies, especially international studies, so we can make comparisons.
Great.
I would just say for networking, it's almost easier in a way to network right now because everybody is accessible. Everyone is on. Getting 15 minutes with a person that you want to ask to potentially be your mentor, not too hard to do right now. So I would say make your list of people that you want to connect with, give it a shot. I would say that, everybody has 15 minutes, whether it's now or in a few months or whatever, but connecting via Zoom and giving people those opportunities is something that people can do. And I think you should just be encouraged to try that. Also, things like this, I'm sure there are breakout sessions and ways to connect, take advantage of those. And then those are great ways to connect with folks and get their emails or whatever. I think, I don't know about you, but I've been going to a lot of these types of seminars and things and hearing people speak on a regular basis that maybe I wouldn't be able to have access to or have the opportunity to schedule because it would take time to get there and whatever. So I think those types of opportunities are all over the place if you have the time to do them.
I would agree with you, Kim. I think that networking is slightly easier. And one of my friends who gave me some really good advice, and I've tried to stick with it throughout this time because I didn't do it prior, was pick 5 or 6 CEOs, women, people that you admire, that you want to have be your mentor, and reach out to them. And as Kim said, it's surprising that everyone has 15 minutes to do that. And I've been able to connect with people that I, one, didn't think would make time available, that are in different industries, that are in totally different fields than myself. But it's been a nice way to connect with them and get some key takeaways from them and what they're doing during this time. So I think that's helpful.
Excellent. Thank you, Nina, Kim, Colleen, Julia, and Donna. This has been fabulous. And thank you so much, Heather, for moderating through this. And we're keeping exactly to our 1 minute left. If this is something that you are interested in, and per Kim's comment too about furthering your networks and connections, we're offering a workshop on December 2nd, so two Wednesdays from now, about strategies and tools for navigating work and life. I'm actually leading that workshop. We're going to be talking about different techniques for how do you follow your values? How do you lead with empathy? How do you have that discussion with your supervisors or others in your networks that gets you to understanding what your preferences are, what's unique to you, and how to find that I don't like the term balance, but that perception of a more balanced approach to these things. So I encourage you to follow that. The links are in the chat. We've retained a good number of people all the way through this. So please make sure that you follow through with that. And thank you again to all of our panelists. You are amazing. And we look forward to maybe having some of you join us again at some point in the future panels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well,